17, just shy of her 94th birthday. 2 years later, Judith died at the age of 94. Memories are like clouds that warp and morph with time. They dance in our minds, changing, vanishing, and sometimes reappearing. Some memories are buried in our subconscious, never to be seen again. Other memories define and shape our characters. A distant memory rarely looks similar to people who have experienced the exact same event. The sisters recounted their stories from their own perspectives. Each navigated the trauma as best she could, from the vantage point of her age, personality, and inner resources. Events affected each differently. The Kroch sisters responded to their hardships as children, and as adults, making sense of what was happening from the viewpoint of a child, and then distilling and recalculating as adults. Against incredible odds, they survived along with their brother Peter, their parents Lore and Fritz, and their grandmother Grova. These are the memories of the three sisters, woven together to tell the story of the Kroch family's escape from the Holocaust. They were the lucky ones. Chapter 1. Kristallnacht, November 1938. Adolf Hitler's dramatic political ascendance began when he was elected the leader of the right-wing National Socialist German Workers' Party, Nazi Party. By 1933, it had become one of the strongest political factions in Germany, even though the Nazis had won only 33% of the votes in the 1932 elections to the German parliament, Reichstag. On January 30th, 1933, Hitler was named Chancellor, the most powerful position in the German government, by the elderly President Hindenburg, who hoped Hitler could guide the nation out of its serious political and economic crisis. Once in power, Hitler's first agenda item was to end democracy. He convinced his cabinet to add emergency clauses into the Constitution that allowed the suspension of individual freedoms of press, speech, and assembly. Special security forces, the Gestapo, the stormtroopers, SA, and the SS, Schutzstaffel, murdered or arrested leaders of opposition political parties, communists, socialists, and liberals. Once his opponents were out of the way, Hitler decreed the Enabling Act of March 23, 1933, which gave him dictatorial powers. He no longer needed to go through the cabinet to enact laws and mandates. In 1933, the Nazis began to put their racial ideology into practice. The Nazis believed that the German, Aryan race was pure and superior, that there was no room in Germany for inferior races such as Jews or Gypsies, nor for people with disabilities. On September 15, 1935, the Nuremberg laws were enacted which prohibited Jews from marrying anyone with non-Jewish ancestry. They defined being Jewish not by religious belief, but by lineage. You were a member of the Jewish race, no matter what your conviction or identification. If you had at least 3 grandparents who were Jewish, you were considered Jewish, even if you were not a practicing Jew or had converted to another religion. The Nazis also spread hate-mongering propaganda that unfairly blamed Jews for Germany's economic depression and the country's defeat in World War I. Inflation had thrown many Germans into financial ruin. Jews who often enjoyed a more affluent lifestyle became the obvious scapegoats. On November 9th and 10th, 1938, the Nazis instigated a riot, pogrom, known as Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. Jewish homes, hospitals, and schools were ransacked, and buildings were demolished. This attack against German Jews included the physical destruction of synagogues and Jewish-owned stores, and the arrest of 30,000 men who were sent to concentration camps. 267 synagogues were burned, and over 7,000 Jewish businesses were either destroyed or damaged. Most German Jews had been proud to be citizens of a